The sun beat down on the tarmac as the transport plane touched down, kicking up dust that blurred the hard stares of the waiting soldiers. Among them stood a young woman, uniform pristine, but eyes heavy with unspoken history. She doesn't belong here, someone muttered. Guards moved to stop her at the base gate until the colonel stepped forward, eyes narrowing at the ink on her wrist. Just 5 digits, burned into her skin like a forgotten code. He froze, then saluted, and everything changed. The transport truck kicked up a storm of red dust as it crawled down the battered airstrip, its engine coughing in the desert heat. Soldiers watched from shaded hangars, brows furrowed. This wasn't a supply run. No one new ever came to Hawthorne Base. She stepped off slowly, boots unscuffed, uniform crisp, but eyes dark with something older than her years. Private First Class Aria Vega. She stood still for a second, just enough time for murmurs to rise from the soldiers around her. Where's the rest of her unit? She's alone. Hell, is this someone's sister playing soldier? At the gate, a guard raised an eyebrow and held out his hand. She produced her orders. Black folder, embossed seal, clearance stamp redacted. This has to be wrong, the guard muttered. Flipping through the pages, it isn't, she said. Quietly, wait here, he radioed. Moments later, Colonel Adrian Beckett arrived, stern-jawed, silver-haired, with eyes that scanned like rifle scopes. He took the folder, read the name, and paused. Private Vega, he said slowly. You're not on any of the inbound rosters. Who assigned you to Hawthorne? Transfer approved from Langley, sir. Beckett stared at her for a moment too long, then handed the folder back. You'll report to logistics. Stay out of Scythe Unit's way. She nodded. Yes, sir. She passed through the gate in silence. Inside the barracks, eyes followed her like tracking beacons. Soldiers sat around polishing boots, cleaning weapons, eating in worn silence. One man scoffed as she passed. Is she even old enough to shave yet? Another voice behind her. Must have won a contest. Get stationed with the big boys. She kept walking. Later, in a dusty admin room filled with broken filing cabinets and flickering screens, she unpacked her gear with silent efficiency. She was alone. Of course, outside, Sergeant Mason Cole watched her from the window, chewing on a toothpick, shaking his head. You think she's one of those tech implants or something? Someone asked. Nah, Cole said. I think she's someone's mistake. But by the end of her first week, whispers started circulating. A server crash had taken down half the base's satellite logs. The tech team was scrambling. Aria walked in, examined the back panel, and without tools, just steady hands, reset the system in minutes. No one told her to. She just did it. Another day. A coded transmission came through, garbled and corrupted. Before intelligence could begin deciphering, Aria had already translated most of it by hand. She handed the notes to Captain Lena Hart and walked away. Hart stood stunned, reading through the sheets. Where did she learn this? She whispered. To herself, no one knew. Aria didn't talk much, but she watched. She listened. When others relaxed, she was sharpening. When others laughed, she memorized exits. She wasn't blending in. She was cataloging. During one combat drill, SKT, Cole challenged her to a sparring match in front of the team. A classic hazing. She agreed. They squared off on the mat. He grinned and lunged. A second later, he was on the ground, gasping. She reached down to help him up. He slapped her hand away. Lucky shot. No, she said. You telegraphed your hip. The room went silent. Later, in the locker room, as she pulled off her gloves, a male soldier caught a glimpse of something on her wrist. He paused. What's that? She looked at him without blinking, said nothing. The soldier squinted. You got a tattoo. What is that? Numbers. Others leaned in. Whispers spread. What kind of numbers are those? Is that a prison mark? Looks like something out of an old ID tag. Rumors grew. The number was short. Just 5 digits, 12,165, faded and small on the inside of her wrist. But the placement was intentional and permanent. Later that night, Colonel Beckett summoned her to his office. She stood at attention, calm. He didn't look up immediately. Just tapped a pencil against a locked drawer. That number, he said finally. Where did you get it? I didn't get it. I was born with it, sir. He stared. A flicker in his eye, recognition, or maybe disbelief. "You're dismissed," he said. She turned to leave. After she was gone, Beckett sat back in his chair, opened the drawer, pulled out an encrypted tablet, and began typing. A few minutes later, an old, pixelated black and white photo appeared on screen. A young woman, dark hair, gaunt face, and on her wrist 12,165. Timestamp 1993. Operation Orchid Vow. Beckett leaned forward, eyes narrowing. He hadn't seen that number in decades. Outside, the base carried on soldiers training. Helicopters whirring, orders barked, but something had shifted. Private Aria Vega wasn't a mistake. She was a memory someone had buried, and she had just walked through the gate like a ghost returning home. They assigned her grunt work, stacks of outdated inventory, rusted munitions reports. Aria worked silently, moving through the tedium with the precision of someone trained not to waste motion. Days passed. She ate alone, trained alone. Nobody talked to her unless they had to, and even then, it came laced with sarcasm or skepticism. "You're not even sweating," one soldier muttered after a 4-hour training march in the sun. "I don't waste water," she replied. The resentment wasn't personal, it was cultural. At Hawthorne, you earned every inch. You bled, broke, and rebuilt. No one skipped the process. No one showed up with secret clearances and no visible record. To them, Aria Vega wasn't a comrade. She was a disruption. The resentment boiled over one Thursday during a tactical exercise. Captain Hart had assigned Aria to the recon team, a test, perhaps, a chance to prove herself. But SKT, Cole, still nursing the bruise to his ego, wasn't having it. "Sir," he said, stepping into Hart's office before deployment, "I've got 3 trained scouts ready. She doesn't even have a rifle certification logged. She's cleared, paper clearance. That doesn't mean anything." "It does here," Hart said coolly. "You have a problem with my orders." Cole gritted his teeth. "No, ma'am." But the damage was done. During the exercise, Aria moved silently through the canyon terrain, 10 paces ahead of the team. Scouting, marking blind spots, identifying flanking positions before anyone else noticed them. They finished the drill in record time. But back at base, Cole reported her. She used unauthorized tech. He said, "Mini drone. That's how she beat the clock." Hart raised an eyebrow. "Did you see a drone?" "No. But no one's that fast." Beckett was informed. The accusation required an inquiry. Aria was summoned to the command tent the next morning. Inside stood Beckett, Hart, Cole, and intelligence. Officer Ruiz. Aria stood before them like a statue, arms behind her back. Beckett slid a tablet across the table. It showed a satellite scan of the training zone. "Walk me through how you covered this ground in under 6 minutes, he said. "I memorized the contour maps the night before," she said. "Used sunlight to measure distances. Watched for boot prints and dust trails. Predicted position by echo orientation and wind distortion." Cole let out a half laugh. "She's reciting textbook garbage." Beckett didn't smile. "You didn't use unauthorized equipment?" Beckett asked. "No, sir." "Why not defend yourself more strongly?" Cole challenged. "Aren't you supposed to be a genius?" Aria turned to him, calm. "I don't need to defend what didn't happen." Cole sneered. "You think silence makes you noble?" "No, it makes me accurate." Hart leaned forward. "Let's not forget she beat your score by 40 seconds. Cole's face darkened. He left the tent without permission. Beckett stayed silent for a moment, then turned to Aria, dismissed. As she left, Hart followed. Outside, she grabbed Aria's arm, not with hostility, but urgency. "You're going to break this place." Aria blinked. "I didn't come to break anything." "Then tell me why you're here." "I don't know. They never told me." Hart's face softened. "Just slightly. That's worse." The rumor mill ignited. Some believed she was part of an experiment. Others said she was a test to see who'd question authority. And then came the final blow. Cole filed a formal grievance: unsafe conduct, disruptive presence, breach of unit trust. Protocol demanded an internal hearing. The base community turned cold. Even the few soldiers who'd once nodded politely stopped meeting her eyes. In the mess hall, she sat alone, on the range, her Target stood clean, but no one watched. She wasn't just an outsider now. She was radioactive. But in those quiet moments, she began to notice something strange. A name, Lt. Elias Beckett, kept appearing in base archives, in after-action reports, encrypted messages, abandoned folders with digital locks. She recognized the name. It was Colonel Beckett's son, the one who died in Operation Orchid Vow. Her fingers hovered over a classified entry, Orchid Vow. Contingency transfer subject 12,165. Active. That was her number. She clicked deeper, but the system locked her out. Security alert triggered. That night, Beckett found her standing at the perimeter fence, staring into the dark hills. Curious place for a walk, he said. I was thinking, she replied. About numbers. He said nothing. I read about your son, she continued. Lieutenant Elias Beckett. Orchid Vow. His breath caught, just slightly. He died in the field, Beckett said flatly. They said he volunteered for a human extraction mission. He did, but the subject wasn't recovered. Officially. Beckett studied her. You're not supposed to have access to those files. I didn't. He stepped closer, looked at her wrist again, the number he'd once seen in a field hospital. On a child, covered in dust and blood. My son died for a little girl with a number tattooed on her wrist, he said, voice low. The agency said she had intelligence value, that she was born into a language nest, that she could hear frequencies normal people couldn't. Arya met his eyes. You were there. I carried you to the evac chopper. Silence. So why send me here? She asked. Why bury it? Why let them eat me alive? Beckett's jaw tightened. I didn't know until I saw the number. She nodded. Now you do. But I can't protect you. If they think I'm playing favorites, I didn't ask for protection. Then what do you want? To stop being a ghost. 2 days later, the tribunal convened. The base theater was filled with folding chairs and frowning faces. Arya stood alone at the front. No advocate, no defense team. The charges were read. Unauthorized tech, breach of trust, disruptive conduct. Cole stood and testified. She's not one of us. She won't talk. She won't share. She walks around like she's above us. Hart pushed back. She outperforms every metric. That's not arrogance. That's excellence. Beckett listened silently. Finally, they asked Arya to speak. She stepped forward, voice clear, even, no drama, just truth. I didn't come here to challenge you or replace anyone. I came because I was ordered. I stayed silent because I was trained that way. I've seen things some of you have only read in redacted lines. She raised her wrist. This number was given to me by people who believed I was a tool, a weapon. But I'm not here to be used anymore. I'm here to belong or to leave. But I won't apologize for surviving. The room was quiet. No one laughed. No one spoke. Then Beckett stood. He walked down the aisle, past the command panel, and faced her. He looked at the number again, then saluted. Private Vega, he said. Welcome to Unit Scythe. Gasps rippled, and everything changed. After the tribunal, the atmosphere on base changed, but only on the surface. Some nodded now when she passed. A few called her by name. Sergeant Cole stopped sneering, though he still kept his distance. Captain Hart offered a quiet nod and left an energy bar on Arya's bunk the next morning. No words, just a gesture. Colonel Beckett returned to protocol. He didn't speak of what had passed between them, but his door stayed open, and once he slid a file her way with a single sentence. You might want to read this. Inside was everything they had on Operation Orchid Vow, details Arya had never seen. The names, the failure, the cover-up, and one more thing. A letter, handwritten by Elias Beckett, sent the night before the mission. If you find this girl, she's not a weapon. She's a survivor. She doesn't need saving, just remembering. The handwriting matched the note Arya had carried in her boots since childhood. Torn, faded, bloodstained. Now she knew where it came from, and who. Elias had died shielding her during extraction. Not for strategy, for compassion. A few weeks later, an alert crackled across the base. An unauthorized satellite signal had been picked up in the outer perimeter. Everyone scrambled. Intel suspected a covert foreign recon unit testing American defense systems. Colonel Beckett tapped Arya. "Suit up, you're with me." This time, no one questioned it. Out in the field, wind howled across the cliff ridge. The sun was setting, casting blood-orange streaks over the rocks. Arya crouched low beside Beckett, scanning the valley through thermal lenses. "There," she said, pointing to warm bodies, 5 clicks northeast. They moved, silent, surgical. But when they reached the target zone, the scene stopped her cold. 2 figures stood waiting, not soldiers, scientists, foreign, unarmed and terrified. Between them, a metal case etched with a symbol she hadn't seen in years, a black orchid. Beckett tensed. "That's the insignia from the Orchid Project." "They brought it back," she whispered. The scientists dropped the case and raised their hands. "We're not here to harm," one said in shaky English. "We came to return something. Something stolen." "You 12,165. Arya froze. They weren't tracking the base. Beckett realized aloud. "They were tracking you." The scientist nodded. "There are others, more like you. They didn't all survive. But we couldn't keep what we took." "What's in the case?" Beckett asked. The man gestured. "Her origin." Arya stepped forward, opened the latches. Inside, carefully preserved, were tapes, files, a photograph of a child her hooked up to biosensory monitors in a facility with walls painted blue. The words at the bottom, lingual convergence, subject 1 to 165. She stepped back. "Why now?" she asked. "Because you weren't supposed to live," the scientist said. "But you did. And because your file just activated again. Someone wants to use you again." Beckett's voice dropped. The project never died. Back at base, Beckett ordered the contents of the case locked under level 10 security. Only a handful of people would know. Arya stood in the briefing room, staring at the photo of herself on the monitor. A child-turned data point, a tool, and suddenly it clicked. All of it. She wasn't just brought here because of her skills. She was bait. The base had been compromised long before she arrived. Her rival activated protocols she never even knew existed. Orchid wasn't dead. It had just gone underground, and someone inside the government had orchestrated her assignment. It hadn't been a mistake. It had been a test. That night, Colonel Beckett visited her bunk. She was sitting cross-legged, reading one of Elias's declassified journals. He stood in the doorway a long time before speaking. "They thought putting you here would expose the leak," he said. "Draw them out." "It worked," she said. "But now they know I know." Beckett looked tired, old. "For the first time, I don't regret bringing you in," he said. "But I regret what they did to you. To my son, to all of you." She closed the book. "Then let's finish it." The next morning, Beckett and Arya delivered the Orchid data straight to Command East. No intermediaries, no detours. By nightfall, black site labs were raided. Several officers, some high-ranking, were arrested for human intelligence trafficking and illegal biocomputational research. Operation Orchid Vow was exposed in full. Arya's file, redacted for over 2 decades, was released. She was no longer a ghost, and then she disappeared. Some say she transferred to a foreign language cryptography unit overseas. Others say she retired, vanished, changed her name. But months later, a brass plaque appeared at Hawthorne's Hall of Service. It read 12,165, not a number, a witness, a warning, a warrior. And just below it, Beckett added a quote: "She didn't belong. She endured anyway. She wasn't part of the system. She survived it. The base never forgot her. And neither did the system that built her, because the girl with the number on her wrist had become something no one predicted, a soldier with a soul, and a truth that couldn't be erased." Weeks passed. The desert heat began to fade as autumn crept across the base. The rhythm of daily drills resumed. The cafeteria buzzed again. New faces arrived, old grudges faded. But something unspoken had changed in the bones of Hawthorne. The plaque bearing Arya's number remained bolted to the wall just outside the main briefing room. Recruits passed it every day without knowing the full story, but those who had served during her brief, unforgettable presence remembered. One morning, Sergeant Cole paused in front of it, stood for a long moment, then saluted. He never told anyone why. Inside Colonel Beckett's office, the silence was different now, less like weight, more like space. There was a peace that had settled around him, though his hands still trembled when he touched his son's old journals. The ghost of Elias had been walking beside him for decades, but it took a girl with a number tattooed on her wrist to finally bring him home. Beckett had filed the final report himself. No delegation, no edits. Private First Class Aria Vega, cleared of all misconduct. Exceptional conduct under covert duress. Mission integrity sustained. Transfer classified. The day she left Hawthorne, she said almost nothing. No farewell speech, no ceremony. Just a firm handshake to Captain Hart, a glance toward Cole, and a nod to Beckett that said everything words could not. As the truck pulled away, Hart turned to Beckett. "Where's she going?" He exhaled. "Somewhere quieter. Somewhere she doesn't have to carry all this." But Arya didn't vanish entirely. Months later, a small, discreet report made its way into military channels. A joint intelligence leak had been halted. A top-secret asset had disabled a corrupt surveillance node in Northern Europe. The only witness was a technician who recalled a woman entering without a sound. He remembered one thing. She had a number on her wrist, he said. 5 digits. I didn't ask. The case was closed before it even opened. Back at Hawthorne, the culture shifted slowly, like mountains eroding, but undeniably. More women were assigned to Scythe Unit. Vetting criteria changed, not lowered, just broadened. Emotional intelligence began appearing on leadership evaluations. Trainees were taught not just combat, but conscience. Captain Hart was promoted to major. Sergeant Cole led 3 new missions, each with a co-lead trained under Vega's methods. In his debriefs, he referred to the Vega protocol when discussing asymmetric recon logic. Beckett remained as commander for 1 more year. Then, quietly, he stepped down. On his last day, he placed one final item in the Hall of Service display, a photo. A young girl, maybe 5 years old, asleep in a cot, her arm tucked under her head, faint numbers just barely visible on her wrist, below it for Elias, and for what he saw before the rest of us did. And somewhere, far from bases and bulletproof glass, Arya Vega walked beside a quiet river. No more uniforms, no more file numbers, just sunlight and peace. A woman who had survived the machinery of power, the cruelty of assumption, the burden of unwanted legend, and walked out not bitter, not broken, but still standing. She was never meant to lead, but she did, not by orders, by example, and in the end, it wasn't her clearance, her code, or even her scars that changed the world around her. It was something simpler, the decision to stay human in a place that tried to make her forget how. Some stories aren't told to entertain, they're told to remember. Arya Vega may be fictional, but her journey reflects the struggles many face, in silence, being underestimated, misunderstood, or labeled by a number instead of a name. In a world that still too often values rank over integrity and image over truth, it's those who choose quiet strength over loud approval who leave the deepest mark. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong, like you had to prove you're worth twice just to be seen once, this story is for you. Leave a comment with the word, the German word for dignity. If her resilience spoke to you, let's fill the comments with a reminder that dignity isn't given by institutions. It's earned in silence, in hardship, and in choosing to stay human no matter the cost.